Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Right now, get a free select tool when you buy the Craftsman V20 2-pack battery kit. Whether it's the backyard, the bathroom, or beyond, Craftsman has the tools to help you power through and get the project done right. Because DIYing is unpredictable, but your tools shouldn't be. Shop Craftsman at Lowe's today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Welcome to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We are off and running on a Saturday morning. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Murray, live from the Circa Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. What a show we have for you today. And look, if the Colorado Rockies can defeat the New York Yankees like they did last night, anything is possible, and I think we're going to have ourselves quite the show. I'm also very distracted right now. I'm going to be honest here, because the Grand Prix in Monaco is doing their qualifying. Boy, is that one hideous city. I mean, geesh, who would ever want to live in that city right on the ocean and yachts everywhere and really rich people drinking very cold wine there, it looks like. So I'm going to do my best. We have that. I might have to tell the folks behind the control room, just turn them all off, because my God, that city looks absolutely remarkable. Okay, we move forward. What a show we have as we get you ready for a game 3 in the NBA as the Western Conference Finals continues to move on. A game 3 on the ice. What happened last night, of course, we will get to, and a whole lot more as the show goes forward. With you for the next 3 hours, you can always tweet me. I'm at one Tim Murray, and hopefully we can make enough money from the show today. Probably unlikely to maybe move to Monaco one of these days, but we'll do our best as the show goes on. What a week it was as the news came out, courtesy of Derek Stevens here on VSiN, that there will be $21 million guaranteed for both Circa Millions and Circa Survivor, 15 in the Circa Survivor pot, 6 in the Circa Millions pot, and then the high stakes one, maybe ones that folks from Monaco can be a part of, the $100,000 Grandissimo. If I probably messed that up, Grandissimo? I think that's what it was. Grandissimo, the $100,000 Survivor pot that is out there. Jeffrey Benson, by the way, going to jump in the studio a little bit later on in the show, and we'll get the latest on Circa Millions and Circa Survivor. So if you're new to the show, this is how we roll. We'll get to what happened last night a little bit later on here in this first hour. We'll have great guests for you, but it is the start of a Saturday, so let's do it right. Let's get you setting the scene.
Let's dive into the biggest games of the day.
We head to the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul. The Minnesota Timberwolves trying to get on the board against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Right now, down 0-2. The Minnesota Timberwolves are a 2.5 or 3 point home dog. At Circa sits at 2.5 juiced. Threes out there, and it was interesting to see this market move a little bit yesterday. Got as low as 1.5, but some of that buyback coming in on the Oklahoma City Thunder, who of course took care of business in games 1 and 2 and have a 2-0 series lead in this one. They have covered both games, winning game 1, 114-88, winning game 2, 119-107. We've seen the total go over in one and under in the other. Under in game 1, over in Game 2. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he got a nice piece of hardware earlier this week, named NBA MVP, and he's hoping to add more hardware to his trophy case as this summer months go on, and he is focused on game number 3, not looking too much past what unfolded in Oklahoma City.
Like all season long, we've got into a habit and built the muscle of just focusing on the next game and worrying about what's in front of us. And it's no different in this situation. We're aware of where we are in the season. But we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we kind of veer from what got us here, and that's what we prioritize.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, over-under today is 32.5, as he went over that number with 38, tying a playoff career high in game number 2, the 119-107 victory earlier this week on Thursday night. So the Oklahoma City Thunder, who were tested to the limit against the Denver Nuggets, now have a 2-0 series lead heading to Minneapolis today to take on the Timberwolves. But the T-Wolves, they know, hey, the series doesn't start until you lose on your home floor, as the saying goes. Mike Conley, one of their vets, has given his thoughts on Game 3 tonight for the T-Wolves.
It is, they took care of business. They did what they came out to do, take care of home court, and now we have to do the same. Game three's the most important one. We got to be locked in and give ourselves a chance to turn the series around.
Total sits at 218 tonight, so no real adjustments we've seen yet in the total. Game 1 was 219. It went under, 114-88 victory for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Game 2 went over the 218, and that's where we're at once again for this one as we head into game number 3 of the Western Conference Finals tonight. The Oklahoma City Thunder at this point in time now up 2-0, a massive favorite to win the NBA championship right now at DraftKings minus 320. The Oklahoma City Thunder sits Indiana plus 425 after their win last night. And the long shots, of course, the Knicks 19-1 and the Minnesota Timberwolves, I'll get it out, at 22-1 to win the NBA Finals. Much more on the NBA coming up in less than 30 minutes. Jonathan Von Tobel will join us to give us his thoughts on tonight and also look back at what we saw last night at the Garden as the Knicks fell to the Indiana Pacers to fall down 0-2 in that series. Speaking of 0-2 holes, that's where the Carolina Hurricanes sit right now, heading into a Game 3 tonight in Sunrise, Florida. The defending champs have looked every bit the part of the defending champs. They have dominated the first 2 games of this Eastern Conference Final, winning Game 1 5-2, winning Game 2 5-0. If you had the under like I did in Game 2, boy, were you fortunate to get under 5.5 there, as 5 goals were scored by the defending champ, the Florida Panthers, 5-0. So they have been rolling since a Game 6 loss at home. And they have been absolutely rolling for the Florida Panthers have, as they are now, I believe, 16-3 over the last 19 games on the road. Rod Brind'Amour is the head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes, and he is expecting his team to put it in the past and focus on Game 3 tonight.
And sometimes it's easier to, recover from a game like that because there's nothing good out of it. If you're close, you play here or there makes a difference. There was nothing good on this game for us. So, we're going to have to learn from it, but it's, everybody has to be better.
Right now, the Florida Panthers, after winning both games as dogs, they're a plus 112 in Game 1. They're a plus 121 in Game 2. The expectation of the bounce back there for the Carolina Hurricanes. All they did was outscore the Hurricanes by a combined 10-2 score there to win this series. You think back, and I mentioned the success that the Florida Panthers have had on the road. I misread my stat. Since the Game 6 loss at home, they have outscored their opponents 16-3 on the road. So 3 straight road games. Remember, Game 7 was the 6-1 absolute pasting of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Game 1, 5-2 over Carolina, 5-0. And now they are back home, where last time they were on home ice there in Sunrise, Florida, they actually lost. They lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs 2-0. The Panthers are as high as a minus 155 favorite at some shops here. Right now it's minus 147. If you do think the Carolina Hurricanes get on the board today, looks like you can get a plus 135 out there at the Westgate Superbook. Anton Lundell, he is looking forward to, despite the success for the Panthers on the road, he is looking forward to being back on home ice tonight.
I feel like, we just try to play the same game wherever we are. But obviously, I feel at home you can really feel that home energy, our fans. So you kind of get excited and ready just listening to them. So obviously we got to use them as some energy for tomorrow.
Puck drop just a little after 8 o'clock in the East for Florida and the Carolina Hurricanes. The Panthers, the favorites now to win the Stanley Cup after they have a 2-0 series lead. Last night, things got a little tighter in the futures market because of Edmonton's win over the Dallas Stars. But right now, you're looking at the Panthers at around plus 120 to hoist the Stanley Cup for a second straight year. Looks more than likely, up 2 games to none, that they will be headed back to the Stanley Cup final for a third straight year. We'll talk much more about Panthers and Canes later on this hour. Pierre McGuire, longtime NHL analyst, now doing work for CBS. He's going to jump on the program to give us his thoughts on Canes and Panthers, and also what we saw last night, an impressive performance from the Edmonton Oilers as they shut out the Dallas Stars by a final of 3-0. 3 of the last 4 games for the Edmonton Oilers with Stuart Skinner and net have been shutouts. Before we wrap up setting the scene, a fun one in the WNBA today as we get Caitlin Clark versus the champs, the Liberty and the Indiana Fever. And the Fever right now, how about this movement in the market today? There's been a whole lot of backing for the New York Liberty. And can we just point out the day that Indianapolis is, or the weekend that Indianapolis is set to have? You've got the defending champion, New York Liberty, coming to town to take on the Indiana Fever this afternoon. The Indianapolis 500 is tomorrow afternoon. And then you've got Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in downtown Indianapolis. So a pretty decent weekend of hoop and activities there in Indianapolis. And it starts today with Caitlin Clark, who, by the way, in the win over the Atlanta Dream earlier this week, snapped a streak of 1,225 days that she had hit a three-pointer in. The last game she had not hit a three-pointer in prior to the victory over the Dream, January 13th of 2022. But New York opened as a 1.5-point favorite, now a 4.5-point favorite. 1 o'clock Eastern tip time between the Fever and the defending champ, New York Liberty, on the WNBA slate. Speaking of slates, here's what we have in store for you today. As Jonathan Von Tobel, as mentioned, host of Money Moves and one of our NBA analysts. He'll join us bottom of the hour. Pierre McGuire, longtime NHL analyst at 10:45 in the East. It's that time of year for our guy Matt Grisham to shine with college baseball. He'll join me in studio in hour 2. Cody Decker talking baseball and his belief in the Red Hot Rockies. Yeah, 9-42 after that win last night. We'll head to the Twin Cities. We'll talk to Douglas Farmer. And then lastly, Jeffrey Benson in studio to talk Circa Millions and Circa Survivor. We're up and running. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. Before we go forward, we must go back. About last night, we do that next right here on VSiN.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a Saturday morning. I'm Tim Murray, live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. Coming up this hour, Jonathan Von Tobel will join us in less than 15 minutes. He'll help us preview tonight's Game 3 between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder and take in what we saw last night at Madison Square Garden as the Indiana Pacers did it again, getting a victory over the New York Knicks, and they now lead 2-0 in that series despite being a 2-0, despite being a 6-point underdog there last night. We'll get to that game here in just a moment. Pierre McGuire later on this hour to give us his thoughts on what we will see tonight between the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes and what we saw last night as the Edmonton Oilers pulled off another upset. So a lot to get to here on this morning as we have a busy day ahead, and let's do what we always do here on this program. If you're new to the program, the VSiN Weekend Morning Line with you every Saturday and Sunday, 10 to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And we set the scene, get you prepared for the day ahead, but we also take a step back. You might be just waking up. Maybe you had a busy night. It's a 3-day weekend. I'm not here to judge, but you might not have seen everything that unfolded last night. And that's why I'm here to tell you what happened, and if you were able to cash your tickets. So let's get to, of course, 114-109, the final score at Madison Square Garden last night. The Indiana Pacers do what they seem to always do, ladies and gentlemen. As a dog, take care of business, and the Pacers now significant favorites to advance on to the NBA Finals, the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. Pascal Siakam was absolutely phenomenal last night. He had the first 11 points for the Pacers last night, 23 in the first half. He finishes up with 39 points. So the Pacers take care of business despite the fact, and I won't say Tyrese Haliburton had a bad game, but 14 points, had 11 assists, only this many turnovers, 1 turnover last night for Tyrese Haliburton, but they had their role players stepping up. In totality, 6 players in double figures last night for the Indiana Pacers. We'll get to the deficiencies on the defensive side of the ball for the New York Knicks, because it was not pretty what we saw from the New York Knicks last night from a defensive standpoint. But at the end of the day, the Knicks can't get it done, can't even up the series, despite the fact that Game 1, we saw a point spread close at 4.5. Yesterday, it closes 6. And the old zigzag theory, which had been and still continues to be pretty successful this postseason. It hasn't been here in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals, though, as New York loses Game 1. They bounce back and don't win Game 2 and don't cover as well. Total was sitting at 224.5, so this thing just ekes under the total last night. But the point spread is 6. Not able to get there, the New York Knicks, and they're now down 2-0. Rick Carlisle, the head coach of the Indiana Pacers.
The third quarter was a very good quarter for us. It was 32-29, and we're at Madison Square Garden, which is one of the ultimate road environments with a tie game going into the fourth quarter, and really that's all you can ask for. And then now we've just got to try to execute as well as we can.
Well, up 2-0. The Indiana Pacers right now in a pretty good spot to advance on to the NBA Finals. A year ago, they weren't able to get any victories in the Eastern Conference Finals, even though they had some competitive games. And right now, if you look at the series market, the Pacers a -525 favorite, and the Knicks sitting at 4-1. And I'm a little upset right now because my bet pre-series was over 5.5 games. So really was banking on the Knicks to get at least one game at home. And they did not. And right now, as we head back to Game 3 on Sunday night, there in Indianapolis, it is currently a spread of, I believe, 1.5 in favor of the Indiana Pacers. So a spot here, now 2 for the Indiana Pacers there for game number 3. As for the defense, a defensive rating, we'll talk more about this with JVT, of 124 last night for the New York Knicks. Just putrid what we saw defensively from the Knicks. Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns really struggling there from a defensive standpoint. You saw Cat get essentially pulled from the game late last night. And just to put that into perspective, now it's just one game, but the worst defense for a defensive rating this year was the Utah Jazz at 119.4. And what we saw last night was a 124 from the New York Knicks. So ugly, to say the least, for the New York Knicks, as it felt like as that game went on, big shots were hit by the Knicks, I thought, late in that game, but they just couldn't get stops whatsoever, and Pascal Siakam led the way with 39 points. So the Pacers now up 2-0, minus 525 favorites to win this series. Game 3 tomorrow night in Indianapolis, as it will be quite the day there in Indianapolis. Indy 500 in the morning, and then the Pacers taking on the Knicks at night there at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in downtown Indianapolis. So the Pacers take care of business. They go up 2-0. And last night on the ice in Dallas, we had a series evened up 1-1 now between the Edmonton Oilers and the Dallas Stars. And you think back to how this series has played out so far, 6 periods, and you could make a strong argument that the Edmonton Oilers have been the better team for 5 of those periods. The problem, the Dallas Stars in the third period of game 1 scored 5 goals on the Edmonton Oilers to get that 6-3 victory to get a 1-0 series lead. But impressive performance, needless to say, last night by the Edmonton Oilers as they win 3-0. Stuart Skinner has now 3 shutouts in his last 4 games for the Edmonton Oilers. This series evened up at 1 game apiece. Connor McDavid says, yes, we know we are a high-flying offense, but we can also play a little bit of defense too.
We're a different team than we have been in years past. Probably not as run and gun as we've been in the years past, as I just said. But as I keep saying, we can play defense. Stu was great. A couple breakdowns there that I didn't like, especially in the third. But he was great.
So an impressive performance by the Edmonton Oilers last night. They go up. They win the game 3-0, and now the series even at 1 game apiece. There was a lot of questioning, though, late in that game. It was 3-0. Oilers were going to take care of business, and Rupe Hintz was slashed in the leg by Darnell Nurse, and it was not deemed a 5-minute major, just a normal 2-minute penalty. And Pete DeBoer, head coach of the Dallas Stars, outwardly questioning if that was somebody else out there, maybe someone wearing a 97, if it would have been that 5-minute major on his player, Rupe Hintz.
Does anyone in this room think if Connor McDavid gets carried off the ice like that it's not a 5-minute major? No. That's my answer to your question.
Right side, third row. Follow up on that. Mason Marchman said he thought there was intent by Darnell on that slash against Hintz.
Yeah.
Do you?
Well, again, if that's 97 carried off the ice in the same situation, I think we all know the answer to what that looks like for us.
So we will see if Hintz is back out there after the slash late in the game last night over his left skate. We'll talk a little bit more about it coming up in 20 minutes. Pierre McGuire will jump on the program. But once again, the Oilers get it done, and they make it a 1-1 series. Right now, the only series in both on the ice and in the NBA that is sitting at 1-1, as game 3 will be Sunday afternoon, in Edmonton. I believe 3:00 Eastern puck drop between the Oilers and the Dallas Stars. All right. Also last night, from the baseball standpoint, I mentioned it to start the show. How about the Colorado Rockies? Yeah, things make sense in baseball. The worst team, maybe the worst team ever assembled in, I don't know if the history of baseball, but getting darn near close. The Colorado Rockies at home as around plus 260 dogs beat the New York Yankees last night. So the Colorado Rockies win that one 3-2. Great news to see as Ronald Acuna Jr. in his return from his torn ACL, first pitch he faced, he hits a home run as he gets it to get on the board. Unfortunately, though, for the Braves, they lose 2-1 to the San Diego Padres. And then the last game on the board, the Dodgers win in 13 innings last night over the New York Mets as the final score there at Citi Field, 7-5. So a rather poor day there in New York City as the Knicks lose. The Rockies beat the Yankees as a plus 260 dog, and the New York Mets in 13 innings at Citi Field fall to the Dodgers 7-5. We're going to talk more NBA coming up bottom of the hour. Jonathan Von Tobel will give us his thoughts on what we saw last night between the Knicks and Pacers, and a preview for tonight as if the T-Wolves can get on the board against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But folks, if you're ready to get in on the action, First Bet has you covered. Sign up now to access exclusive promotions and bet on hundreds of thrilling horse races every day right from your phone or computer. Visit firstbet.com. That's the number one, stbet.com, and use this promo code VSiN200 to score a 20% rebate on all your wagers for the first 60 days up to $200. Don't miss out. Start betting today at firstbet.com. Can the Minnesota Timberwolves knock off the Thunder tonight? We'll find out next.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on that Saturday morning. I'm Tim Murray, live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. The Edmonton Oilers evened things up last night against the Dallas Stars. The Florida Panthers up 2-0 on the Carolina Hurricanes. Game 3 is tonight. More on those games coming up in 15 minutes. Pierre McGuire will join us on the program. But last night at Madison Square Garden, Jonathan Von Tobel's favorite city in the world, New York City. Unfortunately, folks left that arena none too pleased. 114-109, the final score. JVT, I know your affinity to New York City. It must have just been killing you inside to see those Knicks fans walk out of the arena with their tail between their legs.
It was great. It was absolutely hilarious. Earlier in the week, somebody sent me a tweet that said, I don't really appreciate how much you bash on New York. I used to be a big fan of yours, but you're losing one. And I really feel for that person because it's never going to stop, So it was absolutely hilarious watching that happen yesterday. We'll see what happens for the rest of the series. Somewhat surprised that they're down 2-0. I mean, look, I thought this was going to be a series. It was going to be 7 games. And the old Knicks have shown up in terms of what they did defensively throughout the regular season.
Yeah, and I wanted to get to those defensive struggles. Our friend Matt Moore pointed this out. He said, I had to double check this. With Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson on the floor in this series, the Knicks have a 150 defensive rating. That's 1.5 points per possession allowed. So if you're Tom Thibodeau right now, look, it's hard to take Jalen Brunson off the floor. We saw what he is capable of. We know what he's capable of. He's the clutch player of the year. He hits big shot after big shot. He had 30-plus last night. But this is a serious issue right now from a defensive standpoint. I think overall I saw, and JVT, you would know better, I think they had a defensive rating last night of 124, which would be dead last in the NBA if you look at the full season of numbers. So the defense is a massive concern right now for the Knicks.
Yeah, and for anybody out there who thinks like, oh well, that's not normal. That's going to correct itself. No, it isn't. If you go back to the regular season, this Knicks team was about 10 or 15 games under 500 against teams with a top 10 net rating, and they were about 23rd to 25th in non-garbage time defensive rating against those teams. They were absolutely awful when you're talking about taking on the best talent in the world, and that's going to be, I think, going to continue throughout this series when you're talking about the way that this has been played. So, like I say, like the old Knicks are showing up, right? Like this is what they did against the best competition. I don't think it's the most shocking thing in the world. And you know what's crazy, Tim? If we talk about the total or the way this game's getting played in terms of pace, they've gotten their pace through the first 2 games. It did not reach 100 possessions in regulation in game 1. It only had 106 possessions in overall, if you include overtime. And then last night, I think Cleaning the Glass had it at under 90 possessions. So everybody was freaking out, and rightfully so, like, hey, how is this going to be played? Is it going to be played at the pace? Who's going to control it? The Knicks are getting what they want there, and they're still failing.
Jonathan Von Tobel joining us courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line. Of course, you can catch him and Stormy Bonatoni weekdays here on the network. Money Moves, noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And also you can catch JVT with some write-ups on VSiN.com as well. So let's flip it over to the Pacers. I know there's so many Pacer fans out there. I've got some Pacer fans in my life, JVT, like, all you guys talk about is how the Knicks stink. What about how good the Pacers are? Okay. The Pacers been great, man. And what we saw last night to see Pascal Siakam score the Pacers' first 11 points, score 23 in the first half, finish with 39. And it's not like Tyrese Halliburton. I said this in the open, JVT. It's not like he stunk, but he had 14 points. He had 11 assists, only 1 turnover. So he was good, but he's not, he didn't do what he did in game 1. And I think that has to be a little bit of another worry for the New York Knicks, is that the Pacers, they come at you a lot of different ways. They had 6 guys in double figures last night.
Yeah, and like that was one of the things that I had brought up in the write-up, which was the reason why I thought this was going to go 7 games, is that there was a very clear and obvious strength for the Indiana Pacers, right? It's their depth. It's their ability to rely on other pieces outside of like the key cogs. They're one of the top 3, and I don't know after last night if it's changed, but Tim, like, they're a top 3 team in terms of bench scoring so far in this postseason. They might be top 2, right? Like, they have different versatile pieces they can go with. They can do the hockey line changes. They can bring Obi Toppin out there to help them with rebounding, which they've been trying to do. They have guys coming off of the bench that could score, and they've got 2 dudes who can cook on any given night in Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton. Like, they're a really good team, man. They're really deep. I don't think it's a shock that they're here. I think it's somewhat surprising they've won 2 games the way they have, but no, they've been brilliant. And Carlisle, by the way, we should note this. He's coached circles around Tibbs. Like, Thibodeau, I think his time is, nearing an end in New York. I think there's a very firm ceiling with Tom Thibodeau-led teams. He's not a great X's and O's guy. He's not going to be a dude that's going to draw plays on the bench or make adjustments that's going to help. He's just going to roll the ball out to his 5 to 7 best dudes and hope that works. And that just hasn't been the case when Carlisle's just all of a sudden running circles around him.
Yeah, Rick Carlisle has been phenomenal this year. There's no doubt. And I think I was telling Humans earlier in the week when we were just kind of giving early thoughts on both of these series. I said, I don't know if it'll lead to a championship, but the best coach, in my opinion, in the remaining is Rick Carlisle. He has just done a phenomenal job this year. All right, before we wrap up on this, we do have a Game 3 tomorrow night, JVT. You and I have got a ticket on Knicks and Pacers to go over 5.5 games, and now we're sweating a bit after the Pacers took games 1 and 2. Right now, line sits at 2 for Game 2. Any reason to believe that the Knicks can go into Indianapolis on Sunday night and get a win?
No, I don't think so. I think this thing might be over. You know what I mean? Maybe they get, I don't know, give them 1, but the problem is you're not doing the gentleman's sweep, right? Like, you're not back home and then getting 1 and then going back to the road venue to close this thing out. I think that this thing's cooked. I think one of the things that is really irritating for New York is that, like you mentioned it, Brunson's getting hunted. He's not good on defense. When he's been the closest defender, they've been getting absolutely cooked. Going into last night, the team points on possessions where Brunson was a primary defender. Indiana had scored over, I think it was 40 on those possessions. Nesmith was perfect on the floor. Guys were shooting over 60% against him. Like, that weakness is going to continue. Like, maybe you just get the big offensive performance that extends this thing out. But, dude, they're deeper. They're better coached. I think this thing might be done. And I will say this, though, Tim. Like, we're finally kind of starting to see an adjustment, right? Yesterday we closed 6.5. Now this game is at 2. Like, we're starting to see the market start to upgrade Indiana. But I would think that these 2 teams are at least equals with each other. That would mean the should be about 3.5 if you're factoring in what the market's been for home court.
Yeah, wild stat that I heard since New Year's, the Pacers straight up are 44-16 and 11-2 here in the postseason. They've been tremendous, and they've proved it throughout this playoffs. JVT joining us here, courtesy of our progressive guest line. All right, JVT, tonight in Minneapolis, the T-Wolves back at home. They're down 0-2. Showed a little fight there in Game 2. Anthony Edwards had a strong performance, and then, didn't want to talk about said strong performance in the 119-107 loss there to the Oklahoma City Thunder. A lot of skeptics regarding the Thunder. Look, last time we talked, we were both questioning, like, hey, is this team really going to win the West? Well, here they are. They're up 2-0. The defense has shined. I'll ask the same question about this Game 3 that I just asked about Indiana, New York. Any reason to believe that Minnesota, in Minneapolis tonight can get on the board here?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's at least some more things that you could point to for Minnesota other than the Knicks, right? That you can be like, if these things correct, then they're going to do better. For example, the shot quality scores for both of those games had Minnesota actually winning, right? And again, that doesn't mean that they should win those games outright, but it's just like they at the very least probably should have stayed inside of those numbers, but they were really able to do it. So I think that you're probably going to be able to get a better effort. They're shooting sub 50% or right there on shots within 4 feet of the basket. Like, that's got to change. Through 2 games, I think they've only taken 36 shots at the rim, which is a very low number. That should change. And the turnovers can correct itself. And one would just assume that Julius Randle doesn't play like complete other crap and gets benched in the fourth quarter again. But what I think is going to be interesting, Tim, is the role of Rudy Gobert. I think I was wrong here, and it's not like he's a bad defender, but I thought Tim Bontemps over at ESPN put it well, which was, look, this isn't a rim protection series. This is a mid-range series, and the Thunder are cooking them from mid-range, and so that's just not where Rudy's going to be the most comfortable. So I'm being very curious to see what his role is and what they're going to do defensively, because if you're going to replace him with Naz Reid, you better hope Naz Reid can shoot, because he's 0 for 12 from three-point range, and he's been absolutely terrible in the series so far.
When we look at the total, no real adjustments here. 218 was game 2. It did go over, JVT. 219 was game 1, and it went under. Any thought on what to see tonight from a total standpoint as we sit market-wide at 218? I see 1 or 2 218 and a halves.
Yeah, I went over in the first 2 games, and, those split. I lean toward over again. I mean, I just think that if Minnesota's going to bounce back like we expect, and a lot of that is going to be course correction on three-point shooting, I think that's going to be something where, like, you're going to get this thing over the total again. So that to me would be the thing. I think you're going to go over again, for a third time. We'll see if that's actually going to happen, but to me that would be the lean.
Money Moves is his show. He and Stormy every Monday through Friday, noon to 2 p.m. Eastern time here on VSiN. JVT, always appreciate it, man. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, dude.
There he is, Jonathan Von Tobel, giving us the latest from the Western and Eastern Conference Finals, and a little yuck it up there against the folks in New York City. Hey, folks, it's time to bet smarter and get a VSiN Pro subscription. How about this? You can get a year-long subscription. We'll throw in 2 extra months. We'll knock off $40 as long as you use this promo code PRO. So you can get 2 extra free months, 50 cents a day, ladies and gentlemen, $199 for 14 months. You get everything we have to offer as a VSiN Pro subscriber, including our betting splits from DraftKings and Circa, 24/7 video access, and all of the content we have at vsin.com. VSIN.com/subscribe. The promo code is PRO. The Eastern Conference Finals continue tonight on the ice down in Sunrise, Florida. Pierre McGuire will help us break it down next here on VSiN.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a busy Saturday morning. It is Memorial Day weekend. We just broke down what to expect tonight from an NBA standpoint. Of course, we'll revisit that as the show continues on, as we get Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals tonight on the hardwood between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. T-Wolves right now around a 3-point home underdog. Speaking of the Western Conference Finals, last night in Dallas, we saw the Edmonton Oilers even things up against the Dallas Stars, and help us break it down. Longtime NHL analyst, now doing work for CBS Sports HQ. He has a podcast. It is called The Eye Test. Pierre McGuire joins us right now, courtesy of our progressive guest line. And Pierre, appreciate you jumping on. Looking forward to chopping it up with you. And we played a clip earlier in the show from Connor McDavid, and he was joking because when we think the Edmonton Oilers, we think explosive offense, and their last 3 wins have all been shutouts. And he joked, Pierre, yeah, we could play a little defense too. So when you look at last night, what did you take away from the Edmonton 3-0 win against Dallas?
They were really urgent, number one, Tim, and it's really nice to visit with you and your viewers and your listeners. Number two, I think the biggest thing was there was a sense of urgency that hadn't been there in game one, especially the last 20 minutes of game one. But to me, what I like the most about the Edmonton Oilers, when their star players are focused, committed, and coachable, they're really tough to play against. Now, I don't think the Dallas Stars played an A game last night anyways. Pete DeBoer would tell you the same thing. They're a great coach, Tim. But the truth of the matter is they can be better. Edmonton can be better. And I think we're in for the long haul in this series.
You know, I want to get to, of course, what we're going to see tonight between the Panthers and the Canes. But you think at this series so far, 6 periods in the books, it's a 1-1 series. Can you make an argument that Edmonton has been the better team for 5 of those 6 periods, Pierre?
Most certainly. Absolutely, you could. And the truth of the matter is, if it's not for an amazingly strong Dallas power play in game number 1 in the third period, it's probably a 2-0 lead for the Edmonton Oilers in this series going back to Edmonton. But they were undisciplined. They didn't pay attention to detail. Their penalty kill was not good last year. When they beat Dallas, their penalty kill was a perfect 14 for 14. You know, they were 3 for 4. Dallas was in game number 1. So, yeah, can you make the argument that they've been the best team 5 out of 6 periods? The answer is absolutely yes.
Pierre McGuire joining us courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line, doing work with CBS Sports throughout the NHL postseason. You can also catch his podcast wherever you get your podcast, the Eye Test podcast. You know, we played the clip from Pete DeBoer post-game, and I'm curious to get your perspective on it from someone who's been in the league for as long as you have. With the slash by Darnell Nurse late against Rupe Hintz, Hintz gets carried off. We'll see if he's able to play come Sunday night. But what did you make of that slash, and did you agree with DeBoer's comments where he said, look, if that's 97 getting slashed, meaning Connor McDavid, it's not just a 2-minute penalty?
He's probably right about that. But I also would say that slash that happened from Darnell Nurse to Rupe Hintz, Tim, that happens a lot in playoff hockey. It happens a lot over the course of an 82-game schedule for most teams. You know, Pete is trying to work the officials. He's trying to work the league. I totally get it. Every coach in the league does that. Anybody that's ever coached in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I've had the privilege of doing that, you definitely try to work the officials. So I get that. I just hope Rupe Hintz is okay and that he can come back and play the rest of the series. If he can't, that's a big blow to the Dallas Stars, because the line that he centers with Mikael Granlund and Mikko Rantanen, that's as good a line as we've seen in this playoff season. And if he's not there, that's a huge omission for the Dallas Stars. So I just hope he can come back. But did I think it was a penalty? Yes. Did I think it was a major penalty? No. Do I think Pete DeBoer is trying to work the league? The answer is yes, I do.
We're talking once again here to Pierre McGuire, giving us the latest as we get ready for not only tonight, but also tomorrow, looking ahead to Dallas and Edmonton. But let's get to tonight. And, you know, I think the expectation for the series was not for the first 2 games to have a combined 10-2 score. I thought this would be a pretty competitive series, and what we've seen so far has been domination from the Florida Panthers. So let's start with Carolina. As you're down 0-2, you're going on the road to Sunrise. Now, it is worth noting that the Florida Panthers, their last 3 games all coming on the road, they outscored their opponents 16-3, and the last time they were on home ice, they actually lost the Maple Leafs. So I don't know if you make anything of that, but what does Carolina, Pierre, have to do to just honestly just make this competitive? I mean, it has been a bunch of blowouts here in the first 2 games of this series.
They have to play to their identity. I think in games 1 and 2, Tim, they were trying to play to the Florida Panthers' identity. They were trying to out-tough them, out-macho them, out-physical them. And you're not going to do that to the Florida Panthers. Florida Panthers are a 4-line team. They're 6 defensemen deep. They have the most improved player in the playoffs right now, Nico Mikkola, in defense, and he's just been running roughshod physically over every single team Florida's played, whether it was Tampa, whether it was Toronto, and now Carolina. So they're not going to out anything physically with Florida. So what they have to do is get back to their identity, which is a smart, calculated team in the offensive zone that doesn't give you a lot of chances off the rush. It doesn't give you a lot of chances off the cycle, and they defend in front of their own goal really well. We haven't seen any of that from Carolina because I think they've been caught up in this game of machismo, which is not their game. They got to get back to being themselves. But one thing they do really have to do on the physical side of things, Tim, they got to establish some kind of presence in front of Sergei Bobrovsky. The games have been too easy for Bobrovsky. They only had 17 shots on net in game number 2, 9 after 40 minutes. That's not nearly enough. So if I'm Rod Brindamore, I'm getting back to our identity, but I'm stressing to our guys, we've got to get pucks to the net, and we've got to get bodies to the net.
Pierre, you mentioned Sergei Bobrovsky, and it's been, quote, easy for him these first couple of games. What have you made of the play of Frederik Andersen? Because when you think back to the Washington series, I thought he was tremendous. Really, I don't want to say he's the reason they won that series. They were the by far better team looking at that series against the Washington Capitals. How would you assess Andersen's play, and can he get back to the form that we saw earlier in the postseason, the first 2 rounds?
He was really good against Jersey, and as you correctly say, Tim, he was outstanding against Washington. The answer is, yeah, I think he can. I also don't think you can blame him for game 1, and you definitely can't blame him for game 2. He got pulled after the second period. Those shots were going in on anybody. They were deflections. They were great shots. One was a seeing eye shot. And quite frankly, the teammates in front of him weren't playing particularly well. I got to think he's going back in to start game 3, but Freddie's been a tremendous player for Carolina this year when he's been healthy. And here's the other thing. We saw one of the greatest upsets of all time, Denmark beating Canada at the World Championships 3 days ago. That's where Freddie Andersen's from. He's got some mojo coming out of this, even though he wasn't part of it. So I got to think that Freddie will be back in goal, and he can be great. But the thing to me, it's not so much about the goaltending, Tim. It comes down to how smart, how calculated, and how disciplined the Carolina Hurricanes are in Game 3 tonight down in Sunrise.
Pierre McGuire once again joining us here, courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line. All right, Pierre, big picture here on the Florida Panthers. They won the Stanley Cup last year. They went to the Stanley Cup final 2 years ago, lost to the Golden Knights. What is it about this team? And right now, as you look at the 4 teams left in these Stanley Cup playoffs, is Florida the best remaining?
I think they are right now, absolutely, as long as they stay healthy. If you look at their center ice position, Tim, you start with Sasha Barkov, you go to Sam Bennett, then eventually you move down the line to Anton Lundell, and finally you go to Thomas Nosek. There's no team left in the playoffs that has that kind of center ice depth. And you think about the trade deadline acquisitions that Billy Zito and his great staff made by adding Seth Jones from the Chicago Blackhawks, by adding a captain and Brad Marchand, the Stanley Cup winner no less, from the Boston Bruins. Brad Marchand in Boston was playing as a first and second line player. He's playing as a third line player with Luostarinen and Lundell right now in Florida. And he's made a massive impact on their team. Seth Jones is a big minute eater. He can score on the power play. He can kill penalties. He can play in a shutdown situation. Their management team has done a tremendous job. So the answer is, as long as they stay healthy, on paper, they're the best roster left, but it doesn't mean they're going to stay healthy the rest of the playoffs. This is a torture test to get to the Stanley Cup final. It's not easy. And usually there's some collateral damage along the way.
He's Pierre McGuire. Catch him on CBS Sports, as well as check out the podcast Eye Test. Pierre, really appreciate the insight, and enjoy the games tonight.
It was my pleasure to visit with you, Tim. Thanks so much for having me. Have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you very much. There he is, Pierre McGuire, longtime NHL analyst, joining us here, giving us his insight for tonight. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, you know the announcement came out earlier this week regarding Circa Millions and Circa Survivor. Well, how about this? We would like to, if you would like to play Circa Survivor or Circa Millions for free this season, Winner's Circle Proxy is giving away one free $1,000 entry to each contest plus full proxy service. And get this, you'll be paired with a VSiN host for strategy all season long. So enter now for your chance to win. Just head on over to winnercircleproxy.com/VSIN. winnercircleproxy.com/VSIN. Did not anticipate a Denmark over Canada drop, but that's the beauty of having a guest like Pierre McGuire on. And maybe the Danes' upset of the Canadians leads to Frederik Andersen playing much better tonight. Or maybe we could just get us an under 5.5. Maybe that's the way we look at Canes and Panthers tonight. Much more to come. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.